Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Today I wanted to talk about ifs, ands, or buts. The excuses. Remember when you were younger and, well, I don't know, depends on what generation you are, I guess. But my generation, there was this thing about no ifs, ands, or buts, Missy. You go do XYZ. So, like if your parents are telling you what to do, what you need to do, no ifs, ands, or buts. And this morning's meeting was talking about ifs and how alcoholics are full of ifs. Um, if only this would happen, then I wouldn't drink. If I had a better marriage, I wouldn't drink so much. If I didn't hate my job, I wouldn't drink so much. I wouldn't be a drunk. And what that's doing is really allowing the circumstances of our life to control our behavior. And what I learned early when I got into the rooms was the serenity prayer, the serenity to, sorry, the serenity. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And it's that, it's really that wisdom to know the difference. I I didn't understand that I had a disease. And I didn't understand that there was something that I could do to address the disease. I was just 100% lost in my circumstances. Um, I didn't see a way out. And there were no ifs, ands, or buts. I was going to drink no matter what was going on in my life. Um, and so, fast forward to sobriety, it's important that I look at my treatment of alcoholism in the same way. Alcoholism is unconditional, it doesn't depend on what's happening in my life. I feel, and maybe this will change over time, but I feel like my circumstances pushed me towards my disease reaching its low faster. And maybe that is a lack of acceptance. I'm not quite sure because there are people who um, don't end up recognizing, but actually don't drink to the point that their life is unmanageable until something gigantic happens in their lives. So, an example is there was a woman who was going to my early sobriety meetings, and she did not drink hardly at all, she said, until her husband passed away when she got older. And by older, I mean like, I think she was in her 80s or something, or her 70s. And she started to drink alcoholically. What does that mean? It's the obsession. she started to become obsessed with alcohol. And maybe it's because she recognized that link between the the drink and the ability to soften her grief. Um, Even though it wasn't directly resolving her grief, it smoothed it over, maybe, you know? And so I think it's interesting in that way that some of us reach our lows in our 20s, and some of us reach our lows in our 40s. Some of us reach our lows in our 70s. Why is that? Is it because some of us are sicker than others? Or is it because some of us are put in circumstances that are more difficult and cause us to drink earlier in life? I don't know. But what I do know is that when I got to the point in my life, and that's what I need to do is look at my story and understand that once the alcoholism was reaching a point of no return, once the alcoholism got to the point where I was so obsessed I could not do anything or think of anything else but alcohol, it was unconditional as to whether I was going to have a drink or not. So my treatment has to be the same way. And that means whether I'm happy or sad, I need to go to a meeting. Whether I've got a problem or not, I need to call my sponsor. And whether I feel like it or not, I need to do the next right thing. I need to turn off my wanter and do the next right thing, no matter what. Not because it's convenient for me, but because that is my treatment. Just like anybody who has a sort of physical disease, not a sort of physical disease, a physical disease. Treatment is not depending on whether you feel like going. It's interesting how with alcoholism, there's this will, this willingness to to do what needs to be done, to follow, to apply the principles of the program in all of my affairs. And it feels like when we have um, cancer or some other disease, that willingness is not so questionable as it is with alcoholism. And I think it's because I couldn't see that I was dying, Um, I could eventually look in the mirror and see it, but for the longest time, I was blind to it because my alcoholism puts these lenses on me where I can't even see what it's doing to me. Unlike when we have cancer. I mean, I I don't know if that's even true because w- when I have experienced my family having cancer, you couldn't see that either. It's interesting to think about why alcoholism comes with this choice of willingness when cancer, not so much. And it could be just the word. Cancer is a scary word. Alcoholism is like, are you, oh, is like, I don't know that I have it. Like, you can prove that you have cancer. Doctors can prove that you have cancer, but they cannot prove that you are an alcoholic. Only I can make that decision that, yes, I'm an alcoholic and my life is unmanageable. That might be what it comes down to. So when I got sober, I started to look at my sobriety in the same way, that it was circumstantial. I'm sober because of this. I'm sober for this, for a person, for my kids. I was Sorry, my mind went blank again. Sorry, this is happening this week a lot. I was sober, but looking for a loophole. And if I'm sober and looking for a loophole, then that means that I'm not 100% practicing step one. It's the only step we have to practice perfectly. Um, Understanding that my life is unmanageable. And if I find a loophole, like, I wouldn't look for a loophole if I truly believed that. That is like having my sobriety weigh on a circumstance, rather than my sobriety being just simply to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually well. Um, Somebody said something this morning about alcoholism is not self-indulgence. And that really struck me, like punched me in the face. Alcoholism is not self-indulgence because I feel like there are people in my life who believe that alcoholism is self-indulgence and not a disease. And it's like I have this desire to correct them, to change their mind, to make them understand that what I'm dealing with, my disease, is a disease. Um, I can read all the books in the world, um, but none of them are going to help me to convince somebody that alcoholism is a disease. They're either going to get it or they're not going to get it. And it's not my business whether they get it or not. Um, and some of my loopholes that I was looking for were dependent on those people. Like some of those loopholes were like, well, they don't really think I have a disease, so I can maybe have a drink around them. That's dangerous. I don't want to be around people who don't believe that I have a disease. And the reason why is not because I don't love them, but because I feel that doubt, they're not doubting my ability to not drink. They're doubting what is driving my drinking. And that makes me feel at risk. And I think the most powerful thing that was said this morning in my meetings was, and I heard everybody say, "Oh, I wrote that down. I wrote that down." So I wrote it down too. Fear is the what if, and faith is the even if. Fear is the what if. Um, it's playing that it's looking at the worst thing that can happen in every situation. And to add on to the end of that, it's drinking because of it when you're an alcoholic. What if the worst thing in the world happened to me, then I would drink. And I've thought that a lot. If if I were to lose the most important people in my life, I would drink. And I don't think that so much anymore because I think about when I lose people that I love, they become a part of my higher power. And when somebody I love becomes my higher power, that means that I don't have an excuse to drink because my higher power is something that keeps me sober. It's everyone and everything outside of me that gives me serenity and gives me courage and all that good stuff. So when somebody I lose becomes a part of that unit, that that higher power that's giving me courage, I can't drink. It's the opposite. So I feel like I've come to an understanding with myself that losing someone is not an excuse to drink. And I'm not going to lie, there's a part of me there that's like, well, there goes that loophole. But it's true. I mean, my entire sobriety is built on that. It's built on this idea that, uh, because I needed it to be, this idea that what I lose in my life becomes a driving force behind and underneath my sobriety. And faith is the even if. Faith is even if I were to lose somebody that I love, I will stay sober. I will believe. I will believe in my higher power. You know, it all comes down to my concept of my higher power and how I've cultivated an understanding that works for me. And I'm free to do that. I get to do that. Um, I've talked to you guys about how I'm reading the Bible now. It's slow, and I want it to be slow. You know, I have my whole life to read it. It's a big book. I think it's 90 hours or something like that to read, but I can only listen to a little bit at a time because I need to apply it in my life. I have to think about what do I think that means? And um, I guess hit the save button. You know, I talked about a long time ago, if you remember, you lifetime listeners, I talked about um, neuroplasticity and how you practice something and then sleep in particular is pushing the save button for anything that you have been training your brain to do. So that's what I'm doing with the listening to the Bible as well. So, so yeah, I mean, I think it's what it comes down to is my faith in my higher power um keeps me from what ifing. And that's how I explained today. So I like how that came together. I might have been a little spacey while I was talking, but I'm tired and my head keeps hurting. It's just been a long few days for some reason. I think because I was staying up late with the it started with the Commanders winning. Darn Commanders. No, I want them to win. I actually am thinking, and you might think I'm crazy, that they might go to the Super Bowl. I mean, it is a very real possibility that they're going to go to the Super Bowl. And my niece, hi Em, sent me a message yesterday. Oh yeah, I told you guys the other day how my niece came over and she danced to Usher. Well, she sent me a text yesterday and asked if she could come over for the Super Bowl. And I can't tell you how freaking excited that made me that you asked me if you could come over for the Super Bowl. And my husband responded to me when we talked about it last night. He said, "That's so crazy because we were just talking the night before about how much we would love to have you here, but we didn't want to impose, like, well, she's young, I'm sure there's other parties and stuff that she would want to go to." And him and I both said there is no way that him or I would have gone to hang out with our aunt for the Super Bowl when we were your age. So you're just an incredible human being, and I love you so much. And he said this is going to be the most incredible Super Bowl spread we've ever had, because we're so excited for you to come over. And he said, I'm going to get it catered. I'm going to get it catered by multiple places. We're going to have food left over for a week, even after she takes food home. So, and then he said, and if the Commanders are going to the Super Bowl, then watch out. So, super excited for Super Bowl party. And there's only so much I can call it a party. Other people wouldn't call it a party, but with my disability, this is a party. So I'm super excited. And I would not, I don't expect you to to entertain me by mimicking Kendrick Lamar the way you did Usher. I don't know Kendrick Lamar's stuff very well. I was listening yesterday for a hot second and I was like, oh dear. So I'll have to go out and listen to it again today. But I don't think any Usher was a unique um entertainment that I wanted to see, and I was super sad that I couldn't see. So, just so you know, when you come over for the Super Bowl, I am not expecting you to mimic Kendrick Lamar, unless you want to. That would be super fun. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks for listening today, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.